Okay. Welcome, guys, back this week for the next edition of the Gentleman Panda Podcast. Today we are looking at something that is near and dear to both of our hearts.
Recently near and dear.
And we, of course, are talking about Voltron Legendary Defender.
Woo!
Yeah. So, to give you guys, before we jump into this too far, Voltron Legendary Defender, the new one, right, is a Netflix original.
It's an exclusive to Netflix,
right.
yeah.
Yeah, Netflix original exclusive. 12 episodes long.
Well,
13?
There's 3 episodes for the first one, and then there's 10.
10?
Yeah.
Okay, so 13 total. So anyway, so it's 12 to 13 episodes, however we want to slice it, of animated amazingness.
And each episode's only 20 minutes long, so you can get through the whole thing in
about 5 to 6 hours.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, so
and it's based off of the one from the 80s, from the original Voltron.
Right, exactly.
That was a big popular thing in the 80s that I would say it was well received.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's been more recent reboots of it
Which
that were not as popular.
Right.
A lot of people did not enjoy them, and they really just didn't have the fans and the merchandising that the first one had.
Right.
There were Voltron toys for lots of people in the 80s. So I think that that this new one has, well, Voltron was kind of they rebooted it in 2010, 2011, sometime like that. Mm-hmm. And it really didn't do well, and I guess it was bought by DreamWorks.
Right.
And they just kind of had it and held on to it. And as maybe some of you know or don't know, DreamWorks has a partnership with Netflix. A lot of their exclusive Netflix exclusives are done by DreamWorks.
Right, the animated stuff.
Yeah,
right.
It's the production company for it. So,
which led to the guys who worked on Legend of Korra.
Well, not the original. It wasn't the
not the original. No, not the
guys.
main 2 guys, but the production company that did Legend of Korra.
No.
No?
Production company for Legend of Korra was Nickelodeon. It's only the story artist for. I can just tell it because I did the research on it.
Okay, go for it.
So basically, DreamWorks just was holding it, and these 2 guys, one of the main guys was one of the storyboard artists for Legend of Korra, and then the other guy, they were good friends, was one of the main artists, story leads, writers. I think he was the writer for Young Justice and the Green Lantern animated series.
Right.
So they had quite the history of like good, kids animation storytelling.
Right, yeah.
And I guess both of them really wanted to do Voltron, and we're like, hey, so if this becomes, a thing that we do, we'd like to be put on it. And Netflix and DreamWorks made a deal that they would try Voltron for 13 episodes.
Right.
And so it was born.
Yeah. And so it is. And so, guys, obviously the moral of the story is go watch Voltron.
Well, no, the moral of the story is if you really want something, pursue it. And your history of good storytelling on other shows is definitely, gonna help with that. But yes, you should. I think that's the moral for the artistic side.
Yeah.
Your moral of the story
my moral of the story for our viewers is if you got Netflix, go watch Voltron. It's really good.
It is very good.
But we are going to be talking about the show today. Why don't we just put a soft warning out there that there are going to be some spoilery type things.
Spoilers.
That we're going to be talking about. So take this as a fair warning. No one gets to complain about it in the comments. Just kind of go off and
go watch it and then come back.
Go watch it and come back. And then, when you're all pumped up for it, we're going to be talking about why we think the show ended up being so good. So,
and there's definitely going to be a season 2. It hasn't been announced yet, but
it's pretty much guaranteed at this point.
I would think so. I mean, it's been well received. I've only heard good things about it, so
Everyone's been going flipping their lids.
Bananas for
yeah,
this. Yeah,
exactly.
Definitely. So I would be sad and disappointed and surprised if we didn't get season 2 next year. So.
Right. So moving on, we're gonna start talking about why we think that the show ended up being so good and ended up being so successful, and what our thoughts are, kind of behind what we think their success, what their formula for success kind of was.
Yeah.
Which kind of brings us to our first topic, which is about how when they rebooted, new one for Netflix, they really respected the original source material for Voltron.
Yeah, from the 80s.
From the 80s, right? Yeah. They brought in Shiro, right? Which was
Shiro's new.
No, Shiro was part of because the show was originally created in Japan.
Yes.
Before it was imported to America, where
he had a slightly different name though. Shiro was his last name, not his first name.
Right. But the thing is, in the 80s, when they did that, they had a tendency of going in and chopping apart like TV shows and making it westernized. Well, it still was really well received, but it wasn't quite some of the it wasn't exactly the same thing as what it was in Japan. So certain things got changed, and Shiro was a part of that, some of that original content.
Right, but again, Shiro was his last name,
right.
And Shiro was not the Black Lion.
No.
Keith got demoted. Poor Keith. Keith was the Black Lion. He was the leader. And then Pidge and Hunk were both the same, except for Pidge. Again, we said spoilers. Pidge was a dude. Pidge was always a dude.
Right.
And that was something that they changed with this one that I think was a good, fresh, new thing to add.
Right. Was
to make Pidge a girl.
Yeah. It brought a new dynamic to it.
Definitely.
I thought it was really interesting how they basically rearranged pieces of the character cast a little bit. They kept like everybody. Like the princess, for example.
Oh, I love her. I love the new princess.
The new princess is really legit. She's really great, but she's not a pilot. Whereas in the original series, she was one of the pilots.
She was an alternate pilot for the Red Lion.
Right, but in some versions, she was an alternative pilot for the Blue One.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, it's needless to say, the point is.
Yeah, she's not a pilot in this one.
They respected a lot of the source materials, but they rearranged the characters a little bit into interesting combinations.
Yeah, and what I was getting at with Pidge, but is also with the princess, is that they are a new take on the same sort of old basis that they were. So the princess was there in the first one.
Right.
But she was not the character that she is in this one. And I really enjoy and respect the new take on the new princess and the new Pidge.
Well, then let's just throw this out here. All right, Pidge is a technological genius, very smart, and the princess in the new one is legit.
Badass.
She is a badass.
She is so cool. I give her mad props for being she's a real person. She's sad. She misses her people. She misses her father.
Right.
Like, she's soft in that sort of way, but do not underestimate her, like, putting you in your place and, slinging food fight at you. And,
exactly.
And I approve of that.
So, all this to kind of, like, the point that I was trying to angling toward was that the show pays such good homage to the original roots. Like, and you can feel that in the music.
Music is wonderful. I love the soundtrack. It's got the 80s vibe with the new vibe, and it's just beautiful.
Yep. They got it in the music. They have it in the characters, some of the source material, and they kind of have it in some of the flavor of the humor that they kind of throw in there, where it pays homage in sometimes.
Right. I would say the other thing that they pay homage to is the look of Voltron. Looks more like the 80s.
Yep.
They're more boxy. The 2011 ones made them more streamlined, which I like the streamlined lines of the 2011 one. They are cool looking. But this one has more of the boxy, big, beefy, classic-y.
Classic Voltron look to it.
Yeah.
Agreed.
And I like it. I mean, it's different than the other one. I don't dislike or like the 2011 lions were cool too. Mm-hmm. These lions are neat. They were both 3D, which is cool. I like how these ones are animated better, right. But I think this one has a good throwback to that 80s look of the original Voltron. Yeah. And I can respect that. You know?
And I would have to do a little research into it, but man, the music in this show, the very 80s flavor, the electronica in it, if you guys liked or ever played the Mass Effect video game series, it really has that really interesting flavor of like instrumental Space and orchestral 80s. But then also the electronica of like the Space 80s, and it really is a wonderful blend of music, and it feels like almost the exact kind of music you would expect to see and hear and experience in like the Mass Effect games, and it's wonderful.
Yeah. I do like the new flavor that they've added to this one though, with more of the anime feel to it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so you're talking about the animation then?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Well, and the character design, mm-hmm. I would say, is a lot more like anime-esque. And I can respect that since the original Voltron did come from Japan and that sort of essence. But there's a lot of fun that they get away with for making it more like Legend of Korra and Avatar, where it's this weird amalgamation between
Western and
Eastern animation styles. I really like
I
really like the difference that they're adding in there.
Yeah.
Between the new sort of the look of an anime and the animation of an anime, but they still put a lot of Western storytelling, Western characterization, more realistic. Mm-hmm. And they do add more animation than an anime would. And I like that about it.
Right. Yeah, and man, they get away with some really, really beautiful anime-esque moments with some of the humor, some of the expressions and the characters, and we have our favorite scene from episode 1 where
I think it's your favorite scene.
It's my favorite scene.
It's not our favorite scene.
It is hilarious in my opinion. Where they go, they're kind of setting off on their adventure for their first time as a group, and they go flying through through space, and they're all freaking out while the worst pilot of the group is flying one of the lions through space, and everyone's freaking out. And the group picture, that freeze frame, is a work of art.
It's very anime.
Oh, it is wonderful.
I know that's your favorite moment. I think it's cute, really but great. It is very anime. But I mean, I like it. It's good. It's good.
But so then that kind of naturally leads us to another thing, which is what really I found compelling about the story. The fact that I think I enjoyed it so much was that, this was not a show that I would write off as only for kids by any means. It has a very sophisticated feel to it. The moment to moment storytelling is fantastic. And I feel like that's really in part to its really well grounded characters.
Yeah. The characters are great.
Exactly. And I really appreciated how whenever the characters behaved a certain way, they always behaved in line with who you knew they were as characters.
Well, even before that, I would say that each of these characters are a person.
Right.
That's huge, which I think a lot of kids shows neglect to do as much. I mean, not all of them. There's a lot of good TV shows that do this, but what I really appreciated is that each character is their own person. They have their own backstory, they have their own past, they have their failures, their successes that's made them who they are today. Mm-hmm. And we
families.
Constantly throw back to that, and I feel like that's what's really important about this show is that these characters, not only are their interactions great, but before you can even get good character interactions, are they interesting characters that have depth, that have baggage, that have, successes and failures from their past, mm-hmm. family, things that they've lost and gained along the way. And I really appreciate that each character is their own person. Right. And that's why I think their interactions are so realistic.
Right, yeah. It's one thing for you to have like a generic, oh, this character has a tragic backstory. And then for that backstory to never actually impact that character and have it define how he's making he or she are they're making decisions. Whereas everything that these characters are doing is literally motivated by their backstories.
You're talking about Pidge, especially.
Well,
no.
I would say every character legitimately does this. If you think about it, right?
Right,
so,
but I mean, I think the most obvious example is,
sure.
I think that's what we explored the most
is true.
In these 13 episodes. Because for Shiro, we get like glimpses of his past, right? It's kind of fuzzy, but that's kind of part of the adventure. Keith, you have this idea that he has a past, but we never touch it, which I really hope they go into in season 2, because I feel like he has the characteristics of like the Zuko character, where he's got a past, we just haven't seen it or heard it yet.
Right.
We get a little bit of Lance, but I think we could get a lot more of Lance.
Right.
But I feel like the biggest one that we get their history is the princess and Pidge.
Right. Yeah, and I would definitely agree with that. However, I would certainly agree with what you're saying. We definitely get a very in-depth look with Pidge and the princess, which I thought was really cool, because from a writing perspective, if you're thinking in terms of generic, boring terms with a show that is like, oh well, if this is a tropey, boring character and show, you would expect Pidge and the princess to have the least interesting stories. But this is not a
tropey girls.
Right.
Yeah.
But this is not a classic tropey show by any means. In fact, they go ahead and they're like, you know what? We're going to start with these characters and we're going to make their backstories and their motivations really interesting and compelling.
Yeah.
Which I thought was really fantastic. The other thing, though, that I would point out is even though we never went super in depth with Lance or Keith or Hunk or any of them.
All I was saying is I'd like to see it in season 2.
Right, yeah. No, I totally agree with you. And I get where you're coming from. I'm just saying that even without going into depth with those characters, you can still see how their characteristics and personalities...
you know it's there.
You know it's there. You can feel that it's there because it's evident in how they speak and how they act. Like, you can tell that in the immediate interactions of the characters, right? You can tell that Lance probably overacts and tries to push himself to make himself seem like he's so great because he feels like he's in the shadow of Keith, who is this ace pilot.
Or he, like, grew up in a big family.
Or something,
that he had a bunch of brothers that were way older than him, and he's, like, the middle child or the baby child.
Right.
And he wants that attention, and that's why he's such an attention hog. Like, you can feel it even though you never see it. I agree.
And you can feel the evidence of who they are in their actions, in what they do.
Yeah.
I
just appreciated seeing it with Pidge.
Right.
And seeing Pidge's growth from being so minded about just repairing her family and just getting her brother and her dad back to realizing that the world is bigger than herself and she will get hurt. They're not giving up on them, but there's other people that need them too.
Right. And
for her to see outside of herself and her own brokenness to be able to be a pilot that is with a team that is, helping the world.
Right.
I really appreciated seeing that with Pidge, and that's what I hope they do. I liked seeing with the princess, too, with the episode where she has to lose her father. Again, right? He's already died. This is his...
after image.
Right, after image, technological version of him. Kind of like Superman can go talk to his dad even though he's dead, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it's really cool because her dad is like an awesome, very guardian, classic fatherly character. And so to see her lose him and be able to be strong enough to figure it out on her own was just a really cool moment for her. I mean, I really appreciated seeing her. Not that he was a crutch for her, but now having absolutely no crutch. She has to rely on the lions
herself
and on herself.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like her story and Pidge's story is actually a really great example of characters that are struggling with something, but it's not drama. It's not fluff. It's not just kind of thrown in there. Yeah. It's not like, well, I don't like you, so I'm gonna behave this way and blah 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 blah. It's legitimately like you can when you see a character acting out or acting in a way that isn't really being helpful to everyone else, you can clearly see why they are being motivated to do what they're doing.
And see them grow past it, too.
Right, exactly. They react to the situation in realistic ways. the other characters when they see Pidge or the princess act out in a certain way.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, well, it's because of this, and like we understand that, but maybe this, and this, and they
have a
everyone's
conversation
there's
about it.
conversations about it and communication. It's not like when I say drama, right? What I'm referring to is any given situation that a normal human being, by having a normal conversation with another person, would be able to resolve.
Right, not just like drop the mic and walk out of the room.
Right, which
happens every once in a blue moon, but like every tropey drama show is like, let's have a conversation. Not really a conversation. I'm just going to drop the mic and leave.
Right.
And you're like, yo, if you just sat there and talked about it like real people, we would be past this.
Right, exactly. Which is, to be perfectly honest, the thing that plagues the Arrow is it's so painful sometimes when you realize that all these characters, if they had a real human conversation,
I'd
like
say
actual
season
adults,
1 was really bad about this. Season 2 got better about this.
but it's still really rough.
It has moments of it, but I think that they are growing
That's true.
as a production company. But season 1 was very drama. Drop the mic.
Yeah.
And I think the Flash has moments of drop the mic, but it also has moments of resolution. And
right.
Life kind of goes in that circle where you're not open enough to talk about this yet, and then you are. And I think I appreciate that about the Flash.
I would argue that the Flash is certainly better at it. It has moments of falling into that a little bit, but you're right. The Flash is, in my opinion, quite a bit better than the Arrow in resolving character conflict and acting a little more realistically.
Yeah.
I guess the point that I'm trying to make though is that there is not that issue.
No.
With Voltron ever.
Even when the princess is pissed off at them, it's to motivate them into figuring out, and coming together as a team.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that they handled that. That's one of my favorite episodes. Is episode 2, so episode 1 is 3 episodes, like we said, it's 60 minutes long. Episode 2 is only 20 minutes, like the rest of the show. But those 20 minutes are written really, really well.
Yeah.
As far as trying to get them, each of their very different lives to come together. But it's really focusing on Pidge. That's the Pidge arc.
Right.
Which is why I still think that we're going to get a Keith arc. And
I agree.
And then Shiro's going to be sprinkled throughout it.
Right, because, Shiro, in the year that he was missing, is like one of the big mysteries of the show.
It's sprinkled all throughout. But for season 1, we get the introduction to Voltron and an introduction to all the characters, which is episode 1. And then we kind of go into the Pidge arc and the Hunk arc. Mm-hmm. So the other 2 characters are kind of left. And we get the princess.
Right.
But we're missing Corrin if they're going to do a Corrin arc.
That would be interesting.
That would be kind of cool to see. What was his role with the king? We haven't really seen that.
We don't really know what the relationship is between the princess and him, and the king and him, and how he fit in.
Well, the princess and him we get to see, but
they're...
how it used to be, we don't get to see.
Yeah.
I'd like to see a little bit of that too, because I think Corrin brings a lot to the table and could bring more to the table as a character.
Oh my gosh, his face when the castle, they're like in battle, and he's like, oh, there's fires in the castle. Turning on suppressors. The suppressors aren't working. Princess, the castle is coming apart. That face that he makes is so anime and so like internet meme at the same time. It is hilarious. I can't believe they managed to pull that off. And yet they do it at a moment that's absolutely fantastic with comedic timing.
Legend of Korra, you'd like this.
Yeah.
If you liked Avatar: The Last Airbender, you'd like this because it has. If you liked Young Justice, you'll like this. If you liked Green Lantern, you'd like this because they literally brought their past stories with them here. Because we always joke, and there's memes of this over the internet now, that this show is Sokka and Zuko between Lance and Keith. They're like re-embodiments. They are slightly different characters, and I appreciate that. But you still get that feeling of Sokka and Zuko kind of in there. And so if you enjoyed those sort of Western-Eastern mashup, if you enjoy anime, but it can be a little too anime for you sometimes, or if you enjoy Western animation, but you wish it had some of these deeper, darker storytelling elements that anime normally brings to the table, this is a very good marriage of it for the characters, and you'll really enjoy it.
Which, honestly, this point actually is great that you brought that up, because that kind of brings me to what I wanted to bring up next, which was the writers of this story. They're brilliant. I mean, they're really brilliant. And I mean, not just in one way, in several ways at the same time.
They're doing a
They're
good job.
doing several things at once that is really good. And I would argue that in my opinion, some of the best strengths of how they're writing the show is that they understand that sometimes when you have a really dark, heavy topic that needs
or
to
a
be
serious
a
moment.
very serious moment, that if you take it and you're too heavy-handed with that serious moment, it comes off as cheesy. Honestly, it comes off as painful. Or it's just too serious. It's too serious. It's a little heavy. It's a little, it's like, oh my gosh, like, come on guys, like, lighten up a little bit. And then they do, and they insert moments in there where these characters acting like themselves insert humor into the situation where you laugh at it and you're like, ha, I'm glad that I'm laughing, because if I wasn't laughing I might be crying right now.
Well, it's not quite that intense. They haven't hit any cry-worthy moments in the show.
Not quite yet, but man, you can feel the potential there.
I haven't gotten anywhere near that. But I do appreciate the fact that they get, like, a serious moment. They will break it up with humor. That's good storytelling.
Yeah, it is.
Star Trek does this if you've seen the new reboot of Star Trek, the first one, which is back in 2009, so you guys should have seen it by now. There's that moment where Kirk versus Spock, Kirk needs to get back to being the captain. Right. And Spock was instated the captain, and Kirk meets future Spock, and he's like, I just lost my family. I can assure you that I am not emotionally stable. So they have that really intense moment where Spock almost kills Kirk, and he's like so mad about Kirk bringing up his mother, and that you don't even feel it, and everything like that. And we have that moment afterwards of silence. And who is it?
Scotty.
I think it's Scotty that's like, oh, I like this ship. It's exciting. You can't help but laugh. And I love that moment. I remember seeing it. I saw it at the Cine Capri on the opening night at 12 o'clock midnight. Right. And I remember the whole audience just broke out laughing, because it eased that tension.
It was a pressure valve.
It was perfect. It was absolutely perfect. It's still one of my favorite moments because it's so perfectly timed, and I'd say Voltron has that. Oh, it does it. That timing.
It does it all the time, and it's great.
It's good storytelling for a kids show / adult show. Right. You can alleviate that pressure. You can bring the humor back in so the kids are still entertained, and you can move an interesting, deep story element in for the characters to discuss without losing your audience, over something too serious that just took itself too far. And I do agree that they do a very good job of that.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, just to kind of reiterate this just one last time, it is the moment-to-moment storytelling that these guys do. Like, the first episode is just chocked full of these moments. Like, for example, like you can follow the logical progression of how the characters are making their choices, and you can feel when the situations become too serious, how the writers immediately use humor as a pressure valve to alleviate the situation and give the audience a way to breathe. Yeah. And it is masterfully written sometimes in certain moments.
They use certain characters. They use Lance a lot.
They do and Hunk.
Yeah. Occasionally they'll use Pidge too.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I feel like occasionally
they use later in the show they use Keith and Lance too. They threw Keith in there, being like them two going at it.
Oh yeah, we all love that.
We had a moment. I don't remember that.
I cradled you in my arms.
I don't remember that happening.
They do a really good job. I enjoy that. I enjoy the pacing that they do, that they tell the story through. Mm-hmm. Yep. Like I said, it's set up for us to have Lance and Keith as the next two story points. Right, yeah. Like I said, the first episode is like the introduction episode, and then we have these
arcs. Character arcs.
Yeah, character arcs, but it involves the story too. Yep. So we get the Pidge arc. Yep. We get the Hunk arc. Mm-hmm. We get the princess arc into the, I would say, joining factor that will be the end of season 1, beginning season 2.
Right, exactly.
We get that sort of like leadway 2 episodes that are obviously a linchpin to connect into whatever the season 2 beginning will be.
Right.
We'll connect it. And then I feel like we will go into the Lance arc, the Keith arc, and we will probably end with Shiro. Right. I mean, that would make the most logical sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, just because, like, again, Shiro is like the sprinkling of mystery throughout the series.
Right.
We're getting glimpses of him remembering things and whatnot. So, one last thing that I think is worth touching on is the main antagonist, right? Mm-hmm. We don't really get to see a lot of him, but man, by the end of season 1,
something's cooking.
We start to see some evidence of some things that, I mean, at the beginning they kind of dropped little hints and they foreshadowed a little bit, and by the end of season 1, the bad guy isn't just the big bad at the end, like the big boss level. Like, there are some reasons why we're legitimately worried about who he is. Well, he used to be a pilot. Oh, come on. All right, finally.
I'm just going to say it. We already said spoilers. He has which I knew from the beginning. I was like, all the Bayards are missing. I bet the bad guy has the black one. And lo, who has the black Bayard?
The bad guy.
Bad guy. Which...
in other words, so each of the pilots were referred to as paladins. Each paladin had a suit of armor and a weapon to go with the fact that they piloted one of the lions.
Yes.
And the main bad guy used to pilot the black lion.
Right.
And he has the Bayard to prove it.
So here's my question to you. Who were the other pilots? And how were they...
That's the question.
Here's the other thing that I want to ask. Because the lion chooses the pilot, right?
Right.
Okay, so here's my theoretical question. So are the lions neutral? Can they be used for good or evil? They just have to bond with the person?
I don't know.
Well, because otherwise, how would the bad guy and the black lion totally work together?
Well, it could. We could have a Anakin Skywalker type story.
Or are the lions genuinely created for evil?
That would be messed up.
That would be awesome. I think that would be really cool. That the lions were originated for evil to like take over the world, but now they're being used to save it. That would be the coolest redemption story.
That would be a fantastic redemption story.
I mean, I'm not saying that that's what they're going to do by any means, but it would be cool to see.
Would be cool.
Here's my question to you, though.
All right.
Another theoretical question.
Theoretical question.
Shiro's just innately good at this, right? Like, he's the one guy that, like, he bonds with his lion super fast. He's very good, and he was obviously the leader when you see all the rest of them. And so the bad guy has the black lion Bayard, right? So clearly he piloted the black lion.
Yep.
Did Shiro ever pilot a lion before?
That would be impossible because the black lion was locked away.
Then how did Mr. Evil have the black lion? He used to be the black lion pilot, right?
But 10,000 years ago, before he rose to power and became a king and all that, we're assuming that he was friends with the princess's father.
We're not assuming anything. They could have been friends. Maybe the princess's father and the princess like took the lions from him because they're originally evil. Like, I have no idea.
It's true. To be perfectly honest, they are very unclear about a lot of the history between, but that's the part of the mystery.
Oh, I'm 100% agreeing. I'm just theorizing.
Yeah, theorizing. Right. Yeah. So, I mean, to be fair, right?
It could be anything.
It could be anything.
We could be completely wrong, but these are fun theoretical stories that someone else could write. I mean, it would be cool if the whole thing was, I just find it really interesting that, okay, here's the only reason why I ever thought of this. That maybe Shiro, because if the bad guy had the black lion, that means that there were 4 other pilots that he had that were lion pilots with him. Right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so here's my theoretical question to you. The other thing that bothers me is the fact that, this could all be explained another reason too, okay? This is just a Jen theory. That could be totally left field, and they could go 100% a different direction with this, and it'd be perfectly fine. But the thing that I find interesting is the fact that they allude to the fact that they gave Shiro the fighting arm, right?
Right, yeah, his mechanical arm.
And the witch is like, you were supposed to be our greatest weapon.
Right.
Okay, so clearly he must have been like, helping them at some time, right?
Not necessarily. I mean,
why would you experiment on and give someone like this ultimate power if you're not going to use it?
Right. Let me put it this way then. So you know how Shiro was thrown into the Colosseum,
right?
And he became the champion.
Yep.
Right. Which, in my opinion, would explain why he has the arm. Is because after he started winning matches, the druids got involved and they were like, well, we're going to give him an arm and experiment his technology and throw him back into the arena and let him fight a bunch of bad guys. Right.
Maybe.
In the same way that, like the big gorilla mech thing that has the staff that they, like, with the ball of energy or whatever. Anyways, just watch the show, you'll know what I'm talking about. Anyways, so it's not like he was necessarily volunteering to do that. They forced that on him.
Well, he volunteered to be part of the mech thing, though, didn't he?
Doesn't necessarily.
I mean, maybe not. Maybe he's just evil.
The druids made it very clear that they can mess with people.
Yeah.
And it would not surprise me if, they have some form of mind control-y type stuff where they're like, yeah, you're going to do our will, whether you want to or not.
Okay, well, let me get back to the Shiro thing really quick, because there's one other point I want to make.
All right.
His scar.
Across his face?
Across his face.
Yeah.
He didn't originally have.
Nope.
That scar lines up to where that mask is for the lions.
That's interesting.
I don't know if you've ever noticed that. I've always noticed that. That helmet matches right where that scar is on his face. Now, that could be completely incidental and like, oh, yeah, it just matched there. He could have gotten the scar from, like, fighting in the Colosseum. Right. I mean, I don't know. But I just find it interesting. And, Jen thinking, like, 5 steps ahead is like, what is that scar from? I'm curious to know. I don't know if you're curious to know.
I mean, it's easy to assume he got it from the Colosseum. It would be interesting if there was a deeper reason behind it.
I would appreciate if there was. Because, I mean, like Zuko's scar has a very big impact on him.
Right.
Right. So it'd be cool if that scar meant something or came from an event in particular.
Here's another question. Why does Shiro have white hair now?
That's my other question. Where'd the hair... I mean, everyone's like, oh, he got older. I was like, no. That is white hair from 1 year.
No way.
Yeah. So, why does he have white hair?
Right.
It's another completely valid question. That's why?
So many things about Shiro's past don't really add up in a lot of ways. And it's one of the compelling, interesting things about the show.
I know. That's why I'd be heartbroken if they didn't get a season 2. Because there's so many other questions I
would
want to know.
certainly assume that they would, just because of how well the show was received.
Yeah. I would hope so. I want some Voltron, like, merch too. Can we get some like shirts and like
shirts?
I want cups. I mean, literally, I want like glasses and what?
I want a 2-foot tall Voltron toy so I can stick it on my shelf and be like, I have another freaking Voltron on my shelf.
I mean, I'd be cool with having like the characters in there with their Bayards and stuff. That'd be cool. But I'd really wear a shirt. Like I would wear a shirt. I would wear like if they came out with a hat or a bag or anything. Honestly, like tumbler glasses would be cool. You could do anything with this stuff. So Netflix, get on it. We'll pay for it. Give us a season 2.
Yeah, exactly.
So
give us a DVD release of season 2 and we'll buy it.
They ain't gonna do that because Netflix. But give me a season 2 and I'll pay for your merch up the wazoo. And I'm sure a lot of you will too. I hope you guys already watched Voltron and that's why you're here. And if you didn't, well, we spoilered a lot of it, but you need to go and watch it anyway.
It doesn't matter how much we spoiled. You should still go watch it because it's still going to be worth it.
Yeah, it's 100% worth it.
Okay. Well, guys, I think that's going to be it for today. We actually overshot our time a little bit, but that's okay because this was a pretty deep topic. It's a show that was definitely worth watching and talking about. Obviously our recommendation is you should absolutely go watch it. That's kind of given at this point. We might revisit Voltron in the future. There are some really interesting choices that they make with storytelling and things like that. Who knows? We might do an in-depth video.
I might do a diagnostic of it.
Doing a diagnostic of it and talking about their choices with story characters and various things. So keep an eye out for additional content from us. But I think that's going to do it for us this week.
Yeah. It was quite the pleasure, as always, talking about nerd culture and nerddom. If you are a nerd as well and you enjoy podcasts that have to do with nerd things, art things, and anything else in the animation realm, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and expect another podcast next week.
Exactly. And of course, like always, you can find us at thegentlemanpanda.com, which you will be able to, is kind of like our hub home. You can find us on all the social media networks and type things from there.
Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr.
Exactly. And any of our other content you will find links to, or you will find on our website. So please give it a visit and
give us a like and tell your friends if they are nerd culture-dom too.
Yeah. Anyway, guys, thanks for your time, and we'll catch you later.
See you next week.
All right. Bye.